Here are a few more Antarctica fun facts. Antarctica is home to Mount Erebus, the southernmost active volcano in the world, as well as the only known lava lakes, which have held liquid magma for eons, despite the continent's frigid conditions. There are 30 different countries that operate 80 research stations situated around the continent. The human inhabitants who occupy these facilities number around 4,000 during the summer months and only 1,000 during the long, harsh winters. In January of 1979, Emil Marco Palma became the first human ever to be born on Antarctica. And since his historic passage through the birth canal, only 10 other people have been born on the continent. Back to more of my conversation with Brad Olson, plus your questions and comments, right here on Coast to Coast AM. Let's go to the phones for Brad Olson, and we'll begin with Bonnie, west of the Rockies in Nevada. Bonnie, good morning. Welcome to Coast.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call, Richard, and thank you, Brad, for coming on and talking about this subject. I sure hope you get to make it out there. I've heard, that a lot of people get into strange accidents that are trying to get out there and research and feel around and find out about that continent. But I have a lot to say here. When I was young, I was abducted, my whole family, in fact, and taken to the Antarctic. And I believe this must have happened in the late 60s. I was very young. And Hitler was still there. He was, in fact, on board the craft that I was on when they took us there. And I didn't remember any of this until I was in my 40s, but I started having memories of it, and I started realizing I knew German, even though I'd never studied it, because they would always talk in German, etc. And I remember being very enamored with him because he had a very charming personality. As a child, you don't know these things, you don't know anything about what was going on, but
Wait a minute, Bonnie. Did you say you remember being enamored of Hitler?
Yes, he had a very charming personality of what I knew of him because I was just a kid. I mean, you don't know anything.
Right, you weren't aware of all the evil. I see. Okay.
Yeah, you don't know any of that, and so anyway. But what I've learned since then, and boy, it would take 4 shows to talk about it. Because I've been relentlessly pursued by, the people that are involved and the civilization that's out there. And they are not human. They have learned how to use cybernetics to look human. But what they have done is they've stolen the identities of humans. And they are, and when I was there, I have memories of actually going skiing. We actually went snow skiing one time. And they had these skis that were electric, and they had a robot that went next to us that was looked like C-3PO, but it didn't have a head. And we had these lines attached to the skis, and the robot actually went right with us to actually power the skis. And they used these robots, and they can actually grow stem cells, the skin, the whole works, over the top of the robot, and you cannot tell the difference between one of them and a human. And they are all over this country, okay, and all over the world. And a lot of people think that it was Hitler and the Nazis, as in humans, who did these heinous things, but it was not. They are non-human species. And because they can copy humans so well, people really do believe, oh, it's this person that did, they're actually saying, oh my gosh, how could this human do this terrible atrocities? If you watch some of the films of the Nazis, there was a film a while back called The Hess Enigma, Rudolf Hess. Well, my first husband was last name Hess, and I believe he was related to him. He was a B-52 pilot. He ended up retiring in intelligence for the Air Force. I watched this show, and Hess and Hitler are walking next to each other, and there is no question in my mind that they're robots, because of the way you can tell. It wasn't the robotics hadn't been perfected like they had now, but you could tell by the way that they were walking that these were copies. And this is going on everywhere, and it's absolutely frightening. But Brad, what I want to say to you is, you had mentioned that you had Google Earth, been able to find, some of the see some of the things in the Antarctic. I had always heard from another guest that was on the show some time ago that Google Earth was not allowed, that nobody was allowed to take any pictures of the Antarctic. It's very much off limits. I have noticed the continents have some of them are named after people like Rothschild. Evidently they've either purchased masses of land there or whatever, but it's interesting that their names are on, the different islands. But I really just want to hit home that I know these, that particularly the people that have watched me through my life, and I am watched relentlessly, just stalked relentlessly.
Okay, Bonnie, let me just get Brad in here to respond, because there's a lot to chew on that you've given him, and we have a lot of people waiting as well. So great call. Thank you for that. Brad, you want to respond to any of that or all of that or some of that? Do we have Brad? Did we lost Brad?
Where do I want to go? Let's go to Bonnie in Las Vegas. Bonnie, I've only got about 90 seconds, but tell us about what happened in the desert.
Oh, wow, gosh. It's a longer call, but I'll try to hurry. Years ago in 2012, actually, I was being stalked terribly. So one day I got in my car. I was living in Santa Clarita, and I drove down I ended up in Arizona, and I got off the road and at a gas station, and something told me not to get back on the highway. So I turned left, went on this 2-lane highway, and off in the distance I heard a noise. And I looked up, and the moonlight was really bright. It was about 2:30 in the morning, and there was a conveyor belt off the ground, and it had started, and there were bodies on the conveyor belt.
Wait, whoa. Okay. All right, Bonnie, you just struck a deal with me. I'm going to put you on hold.
Go ahead.
I'm going to put you... No, I've got to take a commercial break right here, but I know Ivana's like, Jimmy, she has got to finish this experience.
Yes, Bonnie, we want to hear all about it.
Okay, Bonnie, so do me a favor. I'm going to put you on hold. You stay right there, and then we'll pick this up when we come back. Is that a deal?
Yeah.
I do want to go back to Bonnie in Las Vegas, Yvonne.
Yes.
We've got to hear the rest of the story, so the rest of the show is yours, Bonnie. What happened next? Bodies on a conveyor belt.
No, yes, correct. And I was, terrified. Okay, so I'm driving, and I'm driving a little car. It's a little Lexus, and I all of a sudden come roaring up behind me. All of the, as I'm discreetly trying to look off to see without hoping that nobody sees me because I'm so scared. And all of a sudden, all these semis, and this is just a 2-lane little road out in the middle of nowhere, all these semis come roaring up behind me, and they have these lights that start at the top of the trailer and go all the way down, these bright orange lights, looking like they're just fire, coming up behind me. I mean, it was so bright. Well, I had never seen trucks like that. I'd never seen semis like that. And as I continued driving, and also as I could see off in the, to this conveyor belt, off beyond the conveyor belt, behind it, there was a turning flame. Okay, it was a furnace that the conveyor belt led to, that the bodies were getting burned. Well, anyway, so fast forward to, I start listening to Coast the next year, 2013, and I find out about these deep underground bases, and I discover that these trucks, the reason why they have these lights is because they're coming, that's where they do their business, is these deep underground bases. They have to have these massive amount of lights around their cab and around the trailer to be able to see underground. So they evidently brought these bodies, and they were flying out of there. I mean, they passed me like I was standing still. I was doing 50, and they're roaring past me, and there was at least 8 of them, and it's 2:30 in the morning, and they were just wanting to get the heck out of there. And that is, I just kept driving. I was so scared, something was going to happen, but luckily I got out of there. And but I feel like I was led there for a reason to see this. Something actually told me, get on this road. I had no reason to be there, other than the fact that I was just led by something inside that said, get on there. Somebody somehow wanted me to see this. And then later on I would find out that mass graves are popping up starting in that year. So one of them popped up in Inglewood, another one I think in Texas, and various other places if you Google mass graves, and they have these coffins that hold anywhere from 10 to 30 people, and nobody's been able to explain what they are or why they're there.
Well, when you say bodies on a conveyor belt,
That's what I was going to ask, the same thing.
I mean, we're all painting a picture here.
Exactly. So was I.
Well, help me understand exactly how big was this conveyor belt? Are we talking about human bodies, alien bodies?
Well, I am driving. It's 2:30. I can see from the bright moonlight the bodies. Yes, they were the size of humans. The fact that they, at first I wondered about that because, off in the distance, the conveyor belt, how high was it off the ground? I would say, from the distance that I'm looking, maybe 6-7 feet up off the ground.
Right.
And it's going along it's not short. It was a long thing just sitting off in this field, where there's just nothing around. And you can smell death everywhere. It was just the most pungent smell. And then they're going into the furnace. Now, it's 2:30 in the morning. Okay, if it was anything but, something illegal, why in the world would they be doing it, starting the thing up at 2:30 in the morning?
Have you been back?
No, and you know what? I have wanted to, but I just have never had the courage, I guess. I started, studying all this stuff the next year. Like I said, I started listening to this show, and I started to connect the dots because I've been an experiencer. I've been an abductee in my life, and the person, I was starting in that year, 2011, and I called in because you all had spoken about this.
Right.
2011 was the year that the ET that has been in my life, who actually is a doctor in California, told me point blank that he was an ET. I learned this through regression, and that he had killed many, and that they had a plan. They were killing many more, and that, quote, this was big. He told me these words. He said, this is big. And so evidently they're killing people in mass. And Fukushima, of course, started that year. And I think that everybody that's an experiencer, all of us, can feel all this. It's something that your body, can feel what's happening in the world. And I don't think it's any accident that I ended up there to talk about it. I wish I could get somebody to go back there, but I'm sure, I brought this up years ago on Coast. I didn't finish the story because I couldn't figure out all of the, since then I've learned more stuff, and that's how I was able to figure out about these trucks, these underground towns, underground cities, and why those trucks were there that night, why they came roaring by me, why they had those terrifying lights on them, and so forth, and of course there have been, from what I have found out from talking to people in the UFO community, there have been these mass underground killings, certain earthquakes that have happened that people say really weren't earthquakes, but they were underground explosions, and I believe these people were all killed, and then their bodies were brought up to get rid of them.
Well, let me jump in. Yeah, Yvonne's been trying to get a question to you, Bonnie. Go ahead, Yvonne.
Quick, Bonnie. Did that doctor, your friend, tell you why these people were being killed? These humans were being killed?
Yes, this doctor is the big. I've spoken about him on this show many times. He is the most. Hitler looks like a walk in the park compared to this doctor. He is the one who's behind every terror event in this country. I could speak for hours about this doctor, but I happen to know him because I had surgery with him, and after I had to keep seeing him after the surgery, and through regression later, I was able to remember all the things that were happening because he was using a date rape drug on me, and then he was coming over to my house, and he was telling me things that he thought I would never remember because of the drug. Ketamine causes your memory to suppress. Well, on one occasion, he told me point blank, I'm not from this world. I have I'm a combination of organic and inorganic tissue, and I'm extremely dangerous, and I have killed many, and I'm going to continue killing many, and, quote, this is big, he said. He said,
and
I'm only
they're killing people to rid the earth of these particular humans, or
let me tell you what I said to him in response, because he told me that he had killed the person whose identity that he stole. Okay, so what they do is they kill people and they replace them with copies that are ET, that look like the person. So he had said that I killed this, don't call me that, that's not my name. I killed him in 1995. His own wife didn't even know it. Okay, so I said, well, what'd you do with the body? And he said, well, you're asking too many questions. He said he wouldn't get with a program. And I said, what program? And he said, you're asking too many questions. And that's when he said, this is big, Bonnie. He said, I'm only telling you this because I like you.
Now, this happened in 2011, right?
Yeah, he came to a home I was living at in Texas. And he feeds. They feed on humans, okay? So what they do is they drink the adrenal fluids from the body through a urinary tract catheter, and they use date rape drugs so that the person doesn't remember.
Okay, hold on, Bonnie. We're going to run out of time here. We're at the end of the show. This happened in 2011 in Texas?
Right. I was living there. Wherever I go, they find me. They don't have any problem finding people. So they feed on people. So I am the person that he was feeding on. So he would find me, and then, once they do what they're doing, and they're talking to you. Okay, but you won't remember it unless you do regression because they're using the drug, ketamine. So ketamine suppresses the memory. And so you just feel like you had missing time, and you wake up feeling like a truck hit you, and you have all this, But I went through regression after I, started realizing what was going on, after I found out about the drug, and then I began to remember all the different things. And let me tell you, I could go on for hours about all the stuff that this guy has done. Wow,
that's incredible. Have you reached out to Yvonne?
No, I have tried. Barbara Lamb is who I talked to. I've spent many, many hours with Barbara. So I have not found people. I've done a lot of interviews on Lori and Fenton's show, but I haven't found a lot of people to discuss. I've talked to Linda Moulton Howe. I was at Contact in 2015, but no, I haven't met Yvonne. I would be happy to. If she wants to talk, I'd be happy to.
Send me an email, Bonnie. You could get the email from the show. This is, oh my gosh,
it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting.
Very, yeah.
Well, it sounds like, Bonnie, the good part is you've been out there publicly somewhat, and you're still able to talk about it.
Oh, I've had many attempts on my life, many. In fact, the Las Vegas shooting, this doctor was behind it. It was not, and I was taken to Mandalay Bay that night, and I've never been able to get on the show to talk about it, but they threw me in the trunk of my car, my little bitty Mercedes, and took me to Mandalay Bay that night, and I was in the room that night where he was telling me he was going to throw me out the window, and because I've been talking. And, again, it wasn't Stephen Paddock. It was not. It was them, and they came from outside, and they blew the window inside. That's why you haven't heard about anything on the radio.
Wow, that's incredible. Bonnie, you can reach out to Yvonne through her website, and I want to thank you for calling in tonight. Great phone call. Thank you so much.